Welcome back to the Carpenter Critique. If this is your first time, however, welcome. My name is Luke Carpenter. I'm your host of the Carpenter Critique, and I think it's been a while since I've given a little background on what the Carpenter Critique is, but we are now in our 11th episode, so let me do a little recap. The Carpenter Critique is a podcast and YouTube show that I pair a research psychology article with a current TV show or movie that's coming out. And I try to compare the two and infer what one can each inform the other for pop culture. I have really enjoyed it. It's my 11th episode now. So once again, happy to be doing this. Today has kind of been a long day, but you know what? I just miss engaging with the audience more. I want to invite everybody, if you have a show or a research psychology article that you'd love me to dive into, I would absolutely take suggestions. Anybody, if you have any suggestions, just leave it in the comments below. I also have my email is thecarpentercritique@gmail.com. So simple enough. Send me an email with anything or comment down below. All right. So in our 11th episode, in the 11th hour, we are going over The Running Point, a new Netflix hit show from Mindy Kaling, starring Kate Hudson and Brenda Song and plenty of other comedy people that are also all absolutely amazing. The second season actually just came out a couple weeks ago, so I thought this was very relevant. Also, it is some time to use my actual master's degree. For those who don't know, I've got my master's in industrial organizational psychology. I graduated a year and a half ago. Oh my gosh, no, I graduated 2 years ago. What? Oh, I'm so right now. I'm so chopped. I graduated from grad school 2 years ago. Oh my gosh. I mean, life has changed a lot since. I used to live in California. I lived in LA, Riverside, I lived in Orange County, and now I live in Denver. And I might move again. Who knows? We'll see where the wind takes us. But yes, right now I'm in Denver. I am very much enjoying it. Who am I kidding? I'm a Denver hater. For those who love Denver, so sorry to shit on your parade, but I am a Denver hater. I feel like Denver is an impersonation of a city rather than a city itself. So sorry to anyone who is a Denver lover. It is my bad. I just genuinely... Ugh, I'm not outdoorsy, really. I'm not like the granola type. So me and Denver aren't really simpatico. If there was a Venn diagram of Denver and a Venn diagram of Luke, I feel like there would be a little crossover. Just a little bit. So sorry to the Denver community. It's not my tea, but I have made some really good friends here. So I do love my friends. It's not personal. It is just Denver. All right. Anyway, let's talk about Running Point. So Running Point, it's the second season, like I just said. Hopefully a third season. I've heard rumors online that they don't know if they're going to greenlight a third season or not. Overall, I thought the show was really good. If anyone has seen any type of Mindy Kaling comedy, if it's The Mindy Project, if it's Never Have I Ever, it is a very similar tone. It's not the same, but a lot of the writing is a lighthearted comedy. It's very feminine, but also there's a lot of white guys that are like dopes. A bunch of like dopey white guys around probably a few really empowered women. I feel like that's usually Mindy Kaling's style. I really enjoy it. I think it's very funny. It's not groundbreaking, pitch perfect, amazing television, but it is a really nice, fluffy show and it's really lighthearted. It's really nice. It's very sweet, kind to your soul. So it's always good to have some of those shows. Especially because with the Carpenter Critique, I've reviewed a lot of these big motion pictures with a lot of big things to say. And this one was just a really cute comedy. It's a little bit about women in the workplace, but a lot of it is kind of about family dynamics. Basically, the whole premise of the show is that Kate Hudson's character, Isla Gordon, she's a part of the family of Gordons. And the big Gordon family runs the LA Waves. They're the LA Waves basketball team. Now, it has historically been run by her father and then her brother for years and years and years, very male-centered, and she's been at the center of the charity donations. She's a former party girl, a former kind of slut, which we love. Honestly, Kate Hudson plays her to perfection. She's the reason that the show works so well. I think Kate Hudson was the perfect choice for this. I love Brenda Song too. I honestly have not really seen her in much since The Social Network or The Sweet Life on Deck, and so I'm so glad to see Brenda Song again. I also love the gay brother. Ugh, I forgot his name. Let me Google his name. What is the gay brother's name? I feel so bad. I'm like the gay brother. I'm sure that's what people refer to me as when they're talking about Cam brother. Like, oh, and the gay brother. Who's that one? So I have the right to do it. I have the right to do it. Gay brother in what is it called? What am I even reviewing? Running Point. Drew Tarver. Okay, someone said I looked like Drew Tarver at Gay Kickball the other day. For those who don't know, I'm on a kickball team. We are 0-12 or whatever our record is. We've lost every single game, but I'm having so much fun and I'm making lots of friends, so it's a good time. However, someone did come up to me at kickball the other day and was like, "You look so much like the guy from Running Point." And I was like, "What?" And it's the guy who plays the gay brother. I mean, he's handsome, but he's also like 20 years older than me. So I didn't know really how to take it. I was like, thanks. I mean, does my skin look really that bad? Does it? Should I push it back? Oh my God. Active facelift as the podcast is going on. I'm like, oh my gosh. Sorry. Anyway, Drew Tarver is his name, and he plays Sandy Gordon. Sandy! Cute name. Especially for a boy. A boy named Sandy? Oh. I mean, he's kind of like destined to be gay with that name, but so cute. A cute little gay name. So there's Sandy Gordon, there's Isla Gordon, who is Kate Hudson, our titular character. We also have the other brother that's kind of stupid, and then the one that went to rehab and is now free, but he's still using cocaine all the time. So yeah, they're a complicated family that runs the LA Waves basketball team. It's pretty interesting. I honestly didn't know much about basketball, and the show really isn't that much about basketball. Thank goodness, or else I probably wouldn't have liked it. Sorry, basketball fans. I'm so sorry. It's a lot more about the family dynamics and honestly about female leadership in more male-centered spaces, which I really enjoy. And especially because it's the top two at the game are Kate Hudson and Brenda Song's character, Allie. And so I really enjoy both of those characters. It's a really interesting premise for a show because when do we really ever see like head CEOs, women over sports teams? Very rarely. Let me look it up actually. Many female CEOs are over basketball teams in the NBA. The CEO or president of NBA teams is very low, generally cited as one or two. Sint Marshall over the Dallas Mavericks, and Jeannie Buss over the Los Angeles Lakers. Dang, so only two in all of America. Crazy. But also kind of cool that the LA Lakers have Jeannie Buss. I mean, actually, is she cool? 7 of the most powerful female executives in the NBA. Huh. She's the only woman owner. Okay, so Jeannie Buss is the only woman owner, and she's following her father. Oh my gosh, is this based on a real story? Jeannie Buss, Running Point. Jeannie Buss is the executive producer of Running Point. Oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Okay, no wonder there's such a... Okay, that makes sense. So she's the real life inspiration behind Kate Hudson's character. And I feel like maybe that's why it feels so organic. And a lot of the relationships on the show, I mean, of course, a lot of them are silly, but a lot of the characters do feel real. And a lot of the struggles that they face, sure, it's a little bit Hollywood dramatized. And honestly, there's a little bit of a lightheartedness to it all. But there are a lot of real struggles in the show that people face, such as drug addiction, or bringing celebrity girlfriends, maybe fighting over the girlfriends, looking to trade teams, or looking not to trade teams, looking for more money from the same team. I mean, I found it really interesting. It honestly made me want to go into sports management. I mean, I'm not going to, but it did make me interested, which I've never been interested in sports management before. So there's something. I also really enjoyed the family dynamics of it all. I think, especially if you have someone in the family that was an unexpected choice to be a CEO, I can't even imagine working with my family, first of all. Hell no. Hell no. Sorry, family, but like, absolutely not. I need to be work and life over here. I'm not going to... No. I can't even imagine dating someone that I work with. Well, maybe I could. Maybe just a little bit. But not my husband. My husband's gonna do something else. Whoever I'm dating, you're gonna stay in, we're gonna like do our own thing. But yeah, my husband's definitely gonna do something else. um Oh my gosh, I'm getting so off track. Running Point is very good. I watched it all in one. I hadn't seen the first season before I saw the second season, so it kind of just blends together for me. Also, I feel like the tone is very, very similar throughout. I don't know how people lasted that season one cliffhanger when her position almost gets taken over. I feel like each season, actually, she almost loses her job. You know, maybe not great on the CEO front, but for entertainment value, it's great. I don't know how people lasted, because I was like, I need to watch the next episode right now! But overall, I really, really enjoyed Running Point. I think there's a lot of really complex themes that are broken down into very simple, light-hearted themes on the show. But yeah, I really enjoyed the show. My favorite character, honestly, is Isla Gordon. I think Kate Hudson steals the show each time. Brenda Song does amazing. Sandy does really good, or Drew Tarver does really good. And Schmidt from New Girl is in it as well. Max Greenfield, love him. Love him. Even though he's not the particular love interest, I would have married him. Sorry, Isla. I really would have. Why did you let him go? I get it. The basketball coach, he's pretty hot too, but oh, I love Schmidt. I love Max Greenfield. Just a cute little Jewish man. Come on. But it's all right. The athlete wins in the end, whatever. I think my least favorite plot line was maybe when the basketball player gets the ick from Sandy. They have a little bit of a gay relationship in season 2 where one of the basketball players ends up dating the Gordon brother. Even though the Gordon brother, the more feminine one and the one that's not good at sports, he got the ick first. He decided to stick it out because he wanted to do what's best for the team. And then the athlete, even though his personality isn't that great, turns around and gets the ick with Drew Tarver or Sandy Gordon and leaves Sandy Gordon out in the dust. Are you kidding me? After what he put you through? Ugh. After what he helped you, you spilled the freaking blue slushy on the bed? Oh my gosh, that pissed me off. And then he's like, you want to take the wet side of the bed? Yuck. Yuck. But also, I'm so over men these days. Like, honestly, Hinge is a disaster. Oh, that's another reason why I'm not a Denver fan. Sorry. Denver is a good place if you bring someone to. Denver is not a good place to date someone new. I have one relationship in mind that I can think of that worked, and they both met in Denver. One of them was from Colorado Springs, and one of them, Jillian and Ian, say hi. I'm mentioning you on the pod, but I love them. Their relationship works, and they met in Denver. So I'm not completely hopeless, but I do feel like every single date I've been on has not been good in Denver. I'm trying to think of one date that I've actually really enjoyed, and I honestly, like, maybe one. I've not been on that many, though. I've been on like 20. Okay, whatever. Either way, Denver's dating scene, actually liked LA's dating scene. There were so many people there. Kind of just could pick someone out of the crowd and be like, well, they're beautiful, and they kind of are nice. Also, people are going to always say that LA has not very deep people. I think that's completely false. LA has a lot of people, and this shows in the show as well, that are very motivated and career-oriented, versus, say, the Midwest is a lot more people-oriented and a lot more welcoming and warm. LA, you can have welcoming and warm people, but a lot of times they're just really motivated on their career goals. And I think we see that in the show, but also we see that in real life. Sometimes that's seen as selfish. I kind of more see it as motivated. And there's just this general sense of like, if you can't get me further, or if we're not going to work together on things, then we're probably not going to be friends. But it's because I'm so focused on my goal that I just want people who are going to lift me up. So, I mean, in a sense, that is selfish, and you do want to lift up friends when they're having a hard time too, but also I can't blame LA people for trying to chase their dreams. And I think it's a kind of a beautiful thing. Go after your dreams. Why not? Like, we're only living once, and a lot of these people are not that great anyway. So stick with the ones that you really like, and stick with the ones that lift you up, and go forward. Maybe that's not very community of me, but if we want to be welcoming and warm, we can totally be welcoming and warm too. Anyway, I really did like Running Point. There is a lot that happens on the show, but it's a more sitcom feel, so it's very funny. My favorite joke in the first season is when she keeps running into the screen door. Classic. classic. Got me every time. Kate Hudson also nails it. She's so funny. I think a lot of the show is people just saying this random ass shit to her, and she's like, okay, well, we'll move on. Which is my sister Cambria. She is Kate Hudson. Down. Like, that's Cambria. And I'm Sandy. I'm totally Sandy. Or I arguably could be Brenda Song as well, if we're gonna pick whose character we are. All right. Without further ado, let's dive into the psychology article because I'm excited to get into it. This psychology study is called My Fair Lady, Inferring Organizational Trust from the Mere Presence of Women in Leadership Roles. Now, I am a woman fan, of course. Love women, go women, woohoo! I'm here for all women, women's rights and wrongs, yes! However, women in corporate spaces, I hate that it's still a very new concept to America, and like women leaders in corporate spaces especially. It's within the last 50 years, it's grown a lot, which is great, but there's still so much work to be done. And honestly, women leaders are not equal in the workplace still. I would say the most, well, okay, let me back it up. I got my master's in industrial organizational psychology. So women in leadership roles and women at work is a big topic of discussion in the IO Psych world. It's also really fascinating to see that still, even after all this time, the number one predictor to be rich and well-known in America is to be a straight white man. That's literally the biggest predictor. Of course, that doesn't mean every straight white man is going to be rich, but most of the rich men in America are straight white men, which is unfortunate, but we're trying to make it work, the system, and capitalism and all that shit. But here we are, we're here, and we're here to play. Also, it is really interesting to see how big the gender differences are in the workplace still. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it is promising. Women have continued to accelerate in the workforce over and over again and are continuing to grow in the workforce even today, which is great. And especially women in school. Now more women than men go to college, which is crazy. But also, I would say we don't do enough still to appreciate women in leadership roles at work. There is such a different perspective that people get when women are in charge than men. And we're going to go over that in this article. What this article is called, like I said, it's called My Fair Lady, which I love. So the authors are Mansi P. Joshi, Amanda P. Diekman, not Diekman, Diekman, and it's published in the Personality and Psychology Bulletin in 2022. So relatively new. But this paper examines a very powerful question in industrial organizational psychology, which is, does simply seeing women in leadership make people believe in an organization that it is more trustworthy and fair? The researchers argue that because workplaces have historically been male-dominated, many people, especially women, expect organizations to be less fair, less supportive, and less equitable. Female leaders may function as a symbolic cue that the organization is more communal, supportive, and trustworthy. So does seeing a woman in charge at your work, does that give you any different opinions about who is in charge of you? Or are you primarily used to seeing a man in the leadership? I've actually had more female bosses than I have had male bosses. At first, when I was introduced to this concept, I was like, what do you mean? I've always had a woman in charge of me. But actually now I have one male boss, two male boss, three male boss. So I've had like plenty of male bosses, especially at my work right now. The core theoretical background of the study draws heavily from goal congruity theory, research on communal versus agentic traits. Communal is like signals that an organization values collaboration, care, and fairness, mentorship, and even inclusion, we could go as far to say. And agentic traits would be more like emphasizing competition, power, dominance, and then status as well. We're going to look into other gender stereotype research at work and then organizational trust literature as well. And also we're going to look at women in STEM because we love women in STEM. Yes! Come on, women. Let's get into STEM. But also keep making music. I need some pop girls there. So this paper researched 5 big topics. So one is women often anticipate bias in organizations. Previous research showed that women often expect discrimination in male-dominated fields. Organized cultures can produce mistrust, and women may feel that they do not belong in leadership spaces simply because they don't see themselves represented. There's a lot of tokenism research and queen bee literature in previous psychology, and though it's a stereotype, it does remain true that a lot of the workplace belonging studies, like women aren't really feeling like they belong in the workplace, even still after all this time, unless they see other women in leadership, which makes sense. Female leaders are often perceived as more communal, though. Even earlier psychology found that when women are placed in leadership roles, there is a lot more of a community. The stereotype is that there's a lot more empathy, supportiveness, fairness, collaboration, whereas male leaders value competition, authority, and assertiveness. Of course, not saying that either one is bad or either one is not good, but it is something to note that these are the stereotypes when we see the people in charge of us. So what we're seeing is that representation does matter, even if it's just symbolic. The study also builds on research showing that role models influence belonging. So if you have someone to look up to at your workplace, if you have a mentor, a lot of times you're going to feel like you belong because you feel like someone else is looking out for you. And though representation doesn't really guarantee that someone else is looking out for you at the workplace, mentorship does. And I've been mentored by women before, and it's been very successful. And so I'm not saying it can't be done, but I do think, especially for today, like nowadays, I would really want someone who is rather similar to me mentoring me. But that is to say, that could be man, woman, non-binary person. I really don't care. I just would like to see in my mentor someone that I feel like it would be someone that I would want to grow up to be like, or I mean, I'm a grown-ass man, but someone that I could see myself evolving into. Does that make sense? Maybe someone that I see as similar to me, or that I would set a goal to be like them. There we go. That's the better wording. I would want to set a goal to be somewhat like my mentor. I don't want some mentor that I don't really look up to or I don't really see myself in. The overall research question of this paper is, does the mere presence of women in leadership positions make people trust an organization more? So the participants included both men, women, and then also some non-binary people. Most were adults in the United States. These is actually a few hundred participants per study. This paper is 5 different studies, but I'm going to condense it into one. So if I'm speaking fast and if I'm looking at my computer, it's because I took a lot of notes. So sorry about that. For our watchers, the methodology breakdown: the study mainly used fictional organizations. None of the organizations used in the study were real, so there's one limit to the study. They manipulated leadership gender cues, and then surveys measuring organizational trust and perceived fairness. So a lot of this was done over surveys online. Participants were asked to read about a fictional company, see a leader described as male or female, and then rate the organization based on trustworthiness, fairness, status opportunity, salary expectations, communal culture, and then agenda culture, like I talked about earlier. The first study was female leaders and organizational fairness. The goal was to test whether female leaders make organizations seem more fair and trustworthy. What they found was that participants thought that there was greater fairness, more trustworthy treatment, and more supportive culture when women occupied leader roles. The effect, of course, was particularly strong among women participants, but both men and women thought the same thing, that it was more a fair environment when they saw a woman in charge. Which is crazy because this is all fictional, and they only labeled the difference between male and female leaders was their gender. The second one was status and salary expectations, so whether women leaders influence expectations about advancements and rewards. The results were organizations with female leaders were perceived as offering higher status opportunities, better compensated material, and greater upward mobility. And this, of course, again, especially for the women who answered the study, felt that this was true. This one specifically determine whether the effect only occurs in female-dominated industries. Female leaders increased organizational trust perceptions in both contexts, female and male-dominated industries, which is crazy, but also goes to show, even in Running Point, where it's a very male-dominated field, when there's a female leader, a lot of people do feel more comfortable and think that they might be able to get higher status and fair results simply because it's a woman in charge, not because it's anything else. And then study 5 was directly manipulating organizational values. So determine whether communal organizational information explains the effect. When both communal values were directly communicated from men and women, both female and male leaders signaled trust equally. So that was one of the paper's most important findings, because it suggested that female leadership works as a symbolic cue. The real underlying mechanism is perceived communal culture. So with this study, it basically says if the values are listed with male and female, then both are going to be seen as trustworthy and seen with good values. But if it's just simply an organization with a man or woman at the head, and the other things that we said before were true, which is that people assume fairness and opportunity more with a woman in charge, which is crazy. So the main conclusions are that leadership representation functions symbolically. People infer organizational culture from who is visibly in power. Women leaders often signal organizational trust. Especially for women a part of the organization, female leadership cues fairness, inclusion, support, and opportunity. Communal culture is the real driver. So female leaders matter because they symbolize human-centered workplaces and belonging and relational support. And representation alone, like we've seen in the study, can change expectations for work. So even without the explicit policy information from the organization, visible women leaders changed perception on fairness, mobility, compensation, and trust. Isn't that insane? People just seeing a woman lead versus a man lead assumed all of these things in the study. I mean, it kind of causes me to check myself too. Like, am I really seeing an organization for what it is? Or am I simply just looking at who's in charge and hoping that I see someone that resembles me? But I did think that was really, really interesting. I do understand, in a sense, arguably the female bosses that I've had. I mean, I've had one really terrible female boss, but the other ones that I've had are really, really great. And I did feel a sense of belonging. I felt a lot more maybe included in the conversation versus my male bosses, but I've had some pretty good male bosses too. I love work psychology things. Please, if you have any work psychology related questions, send them my way. I love to see it. There were some limitations to this study, so this was all hypothetical organizations. No real organizations were used for the study, so that was a limit. A lot of it relied on stereotypes, mostly US-based samples, so it would be cool to see what international organizational psychology reacts to women in leadership. Perception does not equal reality. So just because people perceived women to be more inclusive and more fair in the workplace, of course, does not mean that that's true. It's just the perceptions of people. So I want to reiterate that everything that was proved in the psychology study, sure, it was meaningful and it is really interesting, but none of it means it's real. It's just people's perceived effect of women in leadership versus men in leadership. Recommendations for further research: I think it'd be great to use real organizations. I think it would be awesome, especially something like a woman in a male-dominated field, like Running Point, like a female CEO for a basketball team. I think that would be awesome to do some research psychology into that. Intersectionality: maybe we could bring in race. Maybe we could bring in sexuality as opposed to just gender. Maybe we could bring in disability or upper class versus lower class CEOs and see, maybe do Black women leaders produce similar trust effects? How do queer leaders influence belonging? Something like that. I would also love to do it over, if we were going to do this study again, I think it'd be great to do it over a long period of time. Maybe stick with a male CEO for a bit and stick with a female CEO for a bit. How they change the values of the company, or how they work in a longitudinal leadership style. You know what I mean? As opposed to just being a CEO for a bit or for one quick psychology study like we did right now. Some big takeaways from this is, when you see your CEO, how do you feel like you belong? And maybe what are some of your perceptions that you could challenge? Do you see this when you see a woman in leadership? Do you see this when you see a guy in leadership or a non-binary person in leadership? How do you react? All right, so now let's compare the psychology study to Running Point. Well, Isla Gordon is the leader of the LA Waves, and I think she also functions as a psychological symbol for the team. Kate Hudson's character is constantly underestimated because she inherits leadership in a very hyper-masculine environment. Especially in the beginning of the series, we see a lot of people just be like, well, your brother gave it to you. Well, your father had it, so now you can have it. Even then, she's still being seen as a woman given a shot by a man. She's treated as inexperienced, she's dismissed as emotional a lot in the first season especially, and then viewed as a symbolic female empowerment leader as opposed to a strategic one. She's also easily scrutinized way more than the boys if they were in charge. That one podcaster, he could be a symbol in the show for simply just all the male commentators, especially in sports that they see, and women in leadership still have to fight harder for the respect, especially in sports or just male-dominated fields in general. I do think the Waves start feeling more human. The show does a really good job of humanizing the basketball players, but a lot of that I do think has to do with the female in charge. They are opening up, and a lot of their emotional needs are being brought to the surface, as opposed to just what they need for their salary and the competition with one another. You can see that Isla Gordon really cares for her players. And sure, it's a gender stereotype that the guys are just going to demand the money and the women are going to care about who you are. But I'm kind of glad that they showed that in the show. Sure, it's not the most progressive take, but it's also a really cool way to open up the conversation, and it's very inclusive in what it's saying as well. It's not just saying that all the men aren't emotional, because you get really cool characters like Jackie Gordon, who's trying to figure it out, and it's great that he has Isla, a woman older than him, to guide him. The series really does transform over the first 2 seasons. I hope we get a third, because I would love to see where they take it, but the organization before Isla's in there feels very patriarchal, emotionally cold, transactional, very reputation-based, and arguably authoritarian. It's what the CEO says goes. When Isla gets in there, she cares a lot more about player morale. There's relationships, emotional chemistry that starts to build, public trust in the organization. She also has collaboration with Sephora and other female-led brands. I don't know, it was a really, really cool... And it was a really cool lens to see the sports industries through. And I thought it was not only becoming psychologically true, but when we're seeing a woman in charge of a very male-dominated field, it's very like, oh, she can do it. We can all work up to what we want to do. It was a very empowering thing, I felt, at least for myself. It really does mirror the paper's core finding that people interpret women leaders as evidence that an institution may actually care about its human beings, which is insane to think about. But also I would say that women in leadership still, after all this time, represent change. And if an organization is willing to take a chance with a woman in leadership, then what else are they willing to open their mind to? Even though it's 2026, people still do feel this way clearly, like the perception is there. The study specifically notes that female leadership changes perception, especially in male-dominated fields. Like I said before, perception doesn't equal reality, but in this sense, because people saw Isla Gordon in charge, they were like, okay, I'm allowed to be a little bit more emotional. Okay, I'm allowed to be a bit more human, because they're going to care for me. Basketball culture in the show becomes symbolic as opposed to this legacy of masculinity and dynasty power. It's a very cultural thing when Isla succeeds. It's not about public humiliation or hyper competition. The series repeatedly frames her leadership as changing the emotional rules of the organization itself. I would say pat on the back for a series to do that in general. Sure, it's not the most forward-thinking concept of having a woman in charge of a basketball team, but I mean, it's still groundbreaking, which is crazy in 2026. Isla's leadership style is a lot more communal, which again goes with the study, and it's less agentic leadership. It's not really about dominance, and it's not about authority. It's about community and cooperation and trust. So it does ring true to the study and the perceptions of the study. Kate Hudson plays Isla Gordon with this really fascinating contradiction. There is a warmth mixed with exhaustion. There is charisma mixed with insecurity. She has this confidence that's mixed with hypervigilance. And if Jean Boost has anything to say about it, I think that rings true for female CEOs, and especially in a basketball-related field. All in all, Isla Gordon is not merely trying to win basketball games. She is trying to convince an entire ecosystem that power does not have to look emotionally dead to be effective. The real conflict of the show is not, can she run a basketball team? It's, can an institution built on masculine hierarchy survive being emotionally humanized? And the series argues that not only can it survive, but it might actually become healthier because of it. That's why Isla matters, both in the boardroom and on the court, because the culture of leadership eventually becomes the culture of the team itself. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. I am super, super proud of this podcast. I'm so glad to keep putting it out there for you guys. And thank you so much for listening. Seriously, I am so appreciative. And also, I love the little comments that you leave. Please keep engaging with the content. If you want to follow me on any social media, it's at the Carpenter Critique. And if you want to watch, the show is completely available on YouTube as well. It's also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Thank you so much to everybody for listening, and bye-bye.